There's a shoe up there now. The shoe staring me straight in the face, driving me crazy.
It was a style of ensemble acting that you rarely see in New York City, or you rarely see in many theater centers around the world. We had 20-some people on that stage interacting in a very organic and proactive way, enlivening the story and enlivening characters in a way that just totally mesmerized the audience. I saw Steppenwolf's work going all the way back to Grapes of Wrath, which was, I think, 25 years ago.
I love people so much I'm fit to bust sometimes.
And, you know, for most of us, we'd never seen acting of that style and of that nature and with that energy. It was one of the great moments of American theater.
The idea was that they were creating a theater where the artists, particularly the actors, had tremendous agency. I mean, they were looking at the extant model of the regional theater with a director and a board of directors. And they wanted the power of the organization, as it were, to flow in a different direction. That the individual artist is strengthened by having an artistic home and by working repeatedly with colleagues. That it makes the individual not just a better theater artist, it gives that person a sense of confidence and agency and voice. It makes them bold because they have their posse with them.
She's trying to torture me!
Give my son back his leg right this very minute! Father, do something about this, would you? I'm not about to be terrorized in my own house.
This is out of my domain! Give me back my leg!
Oh, Bradley, shut up! Just shut up! You don't need your leg now! Shut up! I never...
The hallmark, I think, really of this Steppenwolf artist is a person who feels made secure by an artistic home. There are collaborations within the ensemble that have real endurance. Those people trust each other, and that gets worked out over time. Does that mean that the relationships are without turbulence? Absolutely not.
You think you can force me into writing this? I'm doing you a favor! Get off your high horse, will ya? Favor! Big favor! Now he is handing down his favors from the mountaintop! Let's just write it, okay?
I think probably it's the confidence that this is a vessel that can sustain turbulence that makes the collaboration so valuable. Steppenwolf was co-founded by Gary Sinise, Jeff Perry, Terry Kinney. In general, the actor is sort of, in the theatrical equation, the lowest person down on the food chain. And Gary, Jeff, and Terry felt, on the contrary, that the actor was the lifeblood of the theater. The first handshake with an audience, the true authority on the stage. There was a spirit of why not, rather than why. And it's something that we work very hard to maintain, as well as, or perhaps as a consequence, a great emphasis on innovation. And that expresses itself not only in the development of new work, but internal to our thinking about the organization and the organizational structure itself. I mean, I think one of the things that's essential to the creation of a company like this is having nothing to lose. There's no way to start Steppenwolf again today. It's just not possible. I mean, you know, Austin Pendleton will talk about the kismet of this company. There was a moment when this group of people came together. For one thing, we're talking about people who are in their 20s. And really, when Gary and Jeffrey were in high school, in their late teens. I've asked Gary about their early days, and they had this, they had this kind of reputation as being, thought they were better than everybody else. And Gary has said to me, Martha, we didn't have anything. We didn't have any money. We didn't, we had no standing in the world. Of course, the only thing we had was our pride and our desire to be better. So that sense of oneself in the world is a unique property, I think, of being very young. It was also a moment in Chicago where we had the largest daily paper, the Chicago Tribune. Richard Christensen was there. He was going around, he was paying attention. He was writing about this work. And what it developed was, in Chicago, there is a fantastic audience. I mean, the people in Chicago go to the theater. They go to all kinds of theater. And there were spaces to occupy. This is what, thus the moniker storefront theaters. All of these little companies that were occupying spaces that were not purpose-built as theaters, but instead they were inhabited by theater artists and turned into performance spaces. For about the first year, they were in a church basement in Highland Park, which is a northern suburb of Chicago. And then in about 1980, around in there, they moved to the Hull House in Chicago at Broadway and Belmont. During that period of the 80s, a number of plays were produced, among them True West, Balm and Gilead.
Around here anyway, most of the girls have a guy who kind of looks after them, After all, he's a rough neighborhood around here. but that's not the only way that he looks after them, if you all follow my meaning. And the girl sort of keeps him.
And these plays started to have a bigger audience, and they moved to New York, and individual members of the company became well-known. John Malkovich, Gary Sinise.
When our folks eat the stuff they raise and live in the houses they build, why, I'll be there.
They moved then again to another storefront theater at 2851 North Halsted. Continued to produce beautiful work, sort of outgrew that space. That's when they began talking about building a theater. So in 1991, the theater that we're sitting in opened here on Halsted Street. Now we operate 3 theaters in this building, a black box in our garage, structure, they're on the ground floor. On the 3rd floor of this building is a 300-seat theater. We've added incrementally to the ensemble. We've added a lot of things programmatically. Just the size of the organization has grown. We do a lot more work in play development. We have a very, very robust program for young audiences. I had just graduated from college, and I was looking for acting classes in the city and came to Steppenwolf, and my teacher was John Malkovich. And John was soon to direct a play here at Steppenwolf called Savages by Christopher Hampton. And I, along with a bunch of other sort of late college age people, were cast in the play as South American Indians. So, of course, this involved a lot of nudity and body paint. You know, the thing that impressed me the most, and this was certainly true of John Malkovich, but it was also true of the ensemble members whom I met doing Savages, and this would be Jeff Perry and Glenn Headley and Fran Guinan, Terry Kinney, Laurie Metcalf, was the ferocity with which these actors and all of these theater artists approached their work. There was a sense of drive and excellence, and that was just incredibly impressive. It was, and it's very addictive to be around theater people like this, and plus they were just good.
The dawn is upon us, and I should be washed and riding Margit across the streams and the fields to check on the growth, the rock. How is beautiful. No, there is no growth. The rot goes unchecked. We lit fires to clear the ground. We dug trenches, so nearly everything is lost. hardly a vine left standing on all of our 1,000 acres. And the hangings again.
We started something called the First Look Repertory of New Work. I gave the challenge to Ed Sobel, who was our director of new play development. I said, you know, I don't want Steppenwolf to be a part of the workshopping it to death culture of the American theater. The plays have to go into production for us, for the playwright and for us to really understand what it is about the play that works, that perhaps doesn't work. And so Ed came up with this model of producing and developing 3 new plays and running them in rotating rep. So the work has an opportunity to go through the process with designers and with the director. It has an opportunity to be in front of an audience.
The storefront movement is obviously a small, opportunistic type way of producing theater. And I think what we have tried to, Martha and I have tried to do in leading this company, which is a large company with a large budget, a lot of real estate, a lot of investment portfolio, is to try to make sure it's nimble and it stays opportunistic and doesn't take itself quite as seriously as an arts institution. In a company like this, where the artist is the center of the voice of the company, while I may be leading the company with Martha Labby, the artistic director, it's not a hierarchical situation. It's not even a republic situation, and it's far from democracy. But decisions are made, ideas get brought forward in ways that are not typical in a more hierarchical arts organization. And no idea is a bad idea, and every idea has to be taken seriously. That can make decision-making and strategizing a little more complicated than it is most in theater companies. But in the end, that very attitude of no idea is a bad idea, or why versus why not, is why this company's been so immensely successful. Well, I came to Steppenwolf because it's one of the great theater companies of the world. It's got an incredible group of artists. It's in a wonderful city that supports good theater. And equally as important, it's got a very smart and progressive audience. We first were an acting company, then we became an acting directing company, and now we have some of America's most significant playwrights in our company. So it's diversified its talent and its focus as it's grown.
There are usually about 16 productions in any given season here at Steppenwolf. We have a wonderful staff of nearly 100 people, and we have a great deal of outreach to our community in terms of learning opportunities. We have a conversation after every performance of the plays.
The guy, where does he live?
Around the corner.
Okay, and he's gone for the weekend.
We don't know.
Of course we know. Bob saw him coming out the door. The kid's not gonna lie to you.
Bob only saw him coming out.
He had a suitcase, Don. He wasn't going to the A&P. He's going for the weekend. Don, can you cooperate? Can we get started? You want to tell me something about coins?
What about him?
A crash course. What to look for, what to take, what to not take. This thing traced, this ain't worth nothing. What looks like what, but it's more valuable.
Well, first off, I want that nickel back.
Donnie.
Nah, I know, it's only a fucking nickel, a big deal. But what I'm saying is I want it back.
You're gonna get it back. I'm going in there for his coins. What, am I gonna take them all except your nickel?
At any given moment, an ensemble member may be very active at Steppenwolf. And then even for a period of years, that person can kind of be off doing something else and then emerge back in and be extremely strong. I think this is the advantage of having ensemble membership that doesn't have a specific list of demands that says you have to be on the stage, this number of times. It's a very permitting contract, which says, we the theater will prioritize you in our work. We ask you to prioritize us.
The actors that started this company and who've worked at this company over the arc of its history come and go with this company. None of them are totally dependent for their financial or well-being.
You are a thief, so ring a bell!
They come here when they have a project they want to do. They come here when we have a project that's exciting to them. They may come here for a year, or they may come for one play. They may come back just for a fundraising event. It's their artistic home, but it's not their only home. What usually can really kill an ensemble company is when all of the members of that company are totally dependent upon the theater for the totality of their artistic work and their financial well-being. No company in this country can sustain that kind of relationship.
scream.
Oh yeah, in the air. Oh yeah. Say it sound like the wind, like a breeze. That's what they say? Huh. Breeze.
She enters.
Holding her head, laying up somewhere, staring out somewhere. Somewhere. Huh.
And the leadership of this company has always been smart when it needed to regenerate the company, or get younger actors in the company, or get more cultural diversity in the company. Today it's a company in range of age from the mid-20s to the low 80s. That's the range of our ensemble.
You remember he used to just take off, no call, nothing? You remember, Charlie?
They've always had trouble.
One time, he just up and left without a word. I told Vi, I said, you pack that son of a bitch's bags and have them waiting for him on the front porch. And you know I always liked your father.
I know.
No, I always liked your father. You know that. I introduced Vi and Beth, for God's sake.
You did not introduce them.
The hell I didn't.
You had a date with him and stood him up and sent your sister instead.
That's an introduction. That's what an introduction is.
I just don't think
He
it's
was
accurate.
too old for me anyway. And Violet, shrinking Violet, she couldn't meet a man on her own.
No one ever called her shrinking
And
Violet.
Charlie and your father always got on real well. They used to go on fishing trips together.
I know.
But when Beverly took off like that without saying anything, without a note even, my first obligation was to look after my sister, don't you?
You don't have an obligation to do anything.
I have an obligation to look after my sister.
When we received August Osage County, I believe it was Tracy had given me the first 2 acts of what was ultimately a 3-act play. We did a reading here. I remember it was a very hot day, and we read it in our rehearsal room.
Oh, is this the idea?
These are collaborators, Tracy Letts and his director, Anna Shapiro, who's also a member of the company. And the rapport among those individuals, as well as, of course, with someone like Amy Morton, who played the central character of Barbara. These are just very close, honest, intimate working relationships. And the work simply, through all of that time together, became, I think, really focused. I always use the example of Rondi Reed and Fran Guinan, who play husband and wife in this play. Well, those 2 actors had known each other roughly the same amount of time as the couple they played were married. So that there's a kind of nuance and subtlety and sensitivity in that relationship that you just can't manufacture.
When is your son?
What? Something about your son.
Son?
Where is your son coming home?
Oh, Martha, when is our son coming home?
Never mind.
No, I want to know. You brought it out into the open. When is he coming home,
I said
Martha?
never mind. I'm sorry I brought it up.
Him up, not it. You brought him up. Well, more or less. When's the little bugger going to appear, huh? I mean, isn't tomorrow meant to be his birthday or something?
I don't want to talk about it.
But Martha...
I don't want to talk about it.
Generally what happens in the way that a season comes together is that we start usually with at least one project that's been motivated by an ensemble member. Perhaps it's a play that one of our writers has written, or it's an adaptation that one of our directors has created, or it's a play that an actor passionately wants to do. And then maybe another ensemble member comes with a project. So once we have, let's say, 2 of them, we begin to think about how are these plays talking to each other? Is there something that, at a thematic level to discuss would be illuminating? And then it may be, there may be a final play that has not come in, and once we're sort of identifying a theme, we say, well, let's go look for a play that might be part of this conversation. The theme is never intended to be a principle of exclusion. I mean, we don't start with a theme and ask the plays to conform to that. And the theme is always something, a pretty capacious theme. The conversation with an audience is so important to us. Having a theme creates a point of view, which always makes a conversation sharper.
I think it's important to understand that Steppenwolf's real success as a theater has been that it never took itself seriously as an institution. As a matter of fact, it tried very hard not to be an institution. It took gambles and opportunities that many theaters would not put themselves at risk for. So it's always the idea of why not versus why.
I think the key element to Steppenwolf's success as a theater are the very principles that our founders championed. And the whole reason that they created the theater was that artists would be better by repeated creative relationships. In other words, to create an ensemble and to create a density of relationships and repeated opportunities to work together. That's the thing that made theater artists better. Transferring a work to Broadway is, actually it's sort of a wonderful, nice perk. It's an opportunity to bring a work and to bring this company to a wider audience.
Companies like Steppenwolf, when it has the opportunity to move one of its plays to Broadway or to London or to Sydney or other places we've moved our productions, it's always a mixed blessing. It's important that the artists receive the recognition they deserve for their work both in Chicago as well as nationally and internationally. But every time a production leaves Steppenwolf, it leaves the family. Those artists are no longer available to us. When we took August Osage County to New York City, and it was one of the longest runs of a straight plays in the history in the last couple decades of Broadway, we lost a significant portion of our principal actors and directors and designers for a significant period of time to the life of that play. And frankly, we don't tour on purpose. When a project comes along that the artists are interested in doing, like playing at the National in London, we make it happen because it's part of their experience, it's something they want to do. We don't generally do it as a way of surviving as a theater company.
What is it, my pet? Time for love?
Were you asleep?
Oh, no.
Kiss me.
We can't.
Try.
Why this farce day after day?
You know, everybody always talks about you have to take risks, blah, 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 risk. Well, what does that actually mean? That you go at things full throttle and not all of it works. It's interesting because I don't know that I would think of things that we've done as mistakes. That doesn't mean they weren't mistakes. It doesn't mean that we haven't done a lot of wrong-headed things. It's just that I don't know that we categorize them as mistakes. It just feels like, okay, we learned from that, and now we do this other thing. Perhaps it's plays that we've done that we thought were going to be terrific. Yeah, it turns out they weren't so great. Are we sorry we undertook them? You know, for the most part, no. I mean, I can think of every play that I could look at and say, well, gee, that really didn't work, or that didn't get an audience, or boy, that was disappointing. There's some aspect of our having produced it that was illuminating. You know, I was reading something yesterday by Conor McPherson when he was talking about, okay, what is it that plays do? And he was talking about that plays are really there to create a play underneath them, and that play is feeling. You know, he says their ideas are fine in a play, but an audience doesn't walk away with what they're thinking. They walk away with what they're feeling. That's the particular gift of a unique gift of a play. So I think, you know, a conversation about a play, in a lot of ways, it gives people an opportunity to experiment with what this feeling experience was for them. And I think that that's, you know, sort of the work of theater and the work of plays, to say, I go there and I allow myself to let my unconscious be in response and to the play that's happening on stage. And it seems to me it's valuable for a theater to say, here's an opportunity to begin to articulate that to yourself. Because, you know, if plays are doing anything to me, they speak in the language of metaphor. They speak in the language of emotion. Plays are psychological. And I don't know that we have enough opportunity in our life to grow articulate around that, to experience the nuance of that, to give it words, and to speak it in public. I certainly become concerned when I see important matters in a national discussion being so the language around it being so flat and literal. Because I think that that's, this is why I think that participating in the theater is a tremendous act of citizenship. I mean, Oscar Eustis often says, it's no mistake that the theater and democracy were born at the same place and at the same time. Because what did the theater ask us to do? It asked us to watch people of differing opinion negotiate difference on stage. We got to watch that. What does that look like? I mean, that's what democracy is. And this is why, to me, going to the theater, first of all, there's a tremendous act of empathy that's asked. I'm watching somebody else's life, and I'm silent. I'm bearing witness to someone else's experience. And it's happening in a language that's not ideological, that's not driven by, rhetorical triumph. It's nuanced, it's subtle, it's psychological. And that, to me, absorbing that and experiencing and witnessing that is just a huge part of what it is to be a good citizen.